Well, going through the first chapter of Kiddushin, we've seen a whole bunch, a whole taxonomy of which mitzvot, which commands apply to women and men equally, and which seem to only apply to men. And Maimonides has given us a list. And for example, lighting, many of in theory, the Mishnah gave us a general rule that time-bound commandments, positive time-triggered commandments, don't apply to women. But the Maimonides gave us a whole list, like Shabbat, lighting the lights, or Kiddushin on Shabbat, lighting the Hanukkah lights, reading the Megillah, a whole bunch of commands, a tefillah, which are time triggered, but to um, apply equally to men and to women, and a bunch of commands which are not time triggered, which seem to only apply to men. But he doesn't give us any examples from temple times. And yet it's one could make a general observation just reading through the Gemara that most obligations relating to the temple seem to apply only to men. It's as if rabbinic commands associated with the synagogue are gender neutral, but those associated with the temple seem to be associated with men. And we'll see this coming out in the next Mishnah, because we'll have a whole bunch of different commands. Hasmichut, vehatznufot, laying the hands on the head of the sacrifice, waving the sacrifice. Vehagashot, bringing the hagashot is bringing the meal offering. Vehakmatzot, taking the handful out of the meal offering. Vehaktarot, and burning the incense. Vehamalikot, and snapping the neck of the bird that's going to be sacrificed. Vehakapalot, receiving the blood from the sacrifice. Vehazayot, and sprinkling the blood from the sacrifice. All of these deeply connected with the temple ritual. Nohagot banashim ve'ein nohagot banashim. They're performed by men, but not by women. And there are certain exceptions. Chutz minchat sota, except the meal offering of a sota, which clearly she's going to bring. Vehanazira, and a female nazira, which clearly they're going to bring, and they're going to actually waive the offerings. So in general, these offerings, these rituals associated with the Beit Mikdash, only apply to men. And of course, the halacha hasn't modernized because the Beit Mikdash hasn't stood for nearly 2,000 years. And the Gemara explains that this is just quoting from the Gemara in Kiddushin. How do we learn that smicha, laying of hands, only applies to men? And there's a pasuk at the beginning of Vayikra, daber el bnei Yisrael. Speak to the Bnei Yisrael, the sons of Israel, and then they shall play, v'samach, and he shall place. And the Gemara learns there, Bnei Yisrael somchim ve'ein benot Yisrael somchot. The sons of Israel place hands, but the daughters of Israel do not place hands. So that's the conclusion of the Gemara in Kiddushin, and that's the Mishnah. Interestingly, there's a Gemara in Chagiga which turns back to this subject. Now, Chagiga is the tractate that deals with going up to Jerusalem for the foot festival. So I suppose we could say right now for Sukkot. And of course, the act of going up to Jerusalem is an act in which, well, the whole people of Israel were involved. Clearly, the whole people of Israel were involved. And the question of whether women would lay hands on the sacrifices comes back in the context of these discussions about people going up to Jerusalem. Here's Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi, very Rabbi Yishmael Omrim. So Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yishmael say, Benot Yisrael somchot reshut. They say it's optional for the daughters of Israel to place hands. So the daughters of Israel may place hands if they wish to do so. Amar Rabbi Yossi, and Rabbi Yossi said, Sachli Abba Elazar. Rabbi Yossi said, Abba Elazar, this is a character, I guess. I don't think this is not Rabbi Elazar. This is some character called Elazar, and he's told this story. Let's hear the story. One day we had a calf for a peace offering, and we brought it to the women's courtyard. The women's courtyard, by the way, is not a courtyard for women. It's the mixed courtyard. It's a courtyard where women and men both circulate. It's called the women's courtyard. So they brought it out into the mixed courtyard. And women placed hands on it. They laid hands on it. And then he explains, not because women are obligated to place hands, but in order to give nachat ruach to the women. I don't know how to translate nachat ruach. It's peace of spirit, something like that. But the Gemara seems to be saying in Chagiga that even though women are not obligated in laying of hands, they seem to have the option of doing so, and they seem to derive, I think Rabbi Sperber might translate it as spiritual satisfaction. They seem to get spiritual satisfaction from the opportunity to do so. The Mishnah then goes on to talk about the land of Israel. There's an incredibly strong parallels between betrothal and marriage and the land of Israel. In fact, we're going to learn we learned at the beginning of the first chapter that the whole idea of betrothal via, giving someone an object of value, silver, a ring. We use a ring today. It's all derived from the first purchase of land, which our father Abraham makes in the land of Israel when he's buying a plot for his beloved deceased wife Sarah. So there's this connection between marriage and land. And so the Mishnah, as if it's freely associating, it remarks, in parallel to its remarks about whether men or women are obligated in a different mitzvot. In parallel, it says, every command which is not dependent on the land is practiced. Every command which is not dependent on the land is practiced in the land and outside the land. And any command which is dependent on the land only applies in the land. And there's only two examples, orla and kilaim. Orla is the obligation not to eat for the first 3 or 4 years of a tree's existence, not to eat its fruit. And kilaim is the prohibition on planting diverse species. And according to the Mishnah, it applies outside the land of Israel as well as inside. So if you plant an apple tree in your garden, you don't eat the fruit for 4 years. And Rabbi Eliezer says, Omer af min chadash, also not eating new produce. The new produce is the new crop of wheat or barley, which comes sometime in the spring, in the very early spring in the land of Israel. But until we bring the Omer offering the day after Pesach, we do not eat the new crop. Almost as if it's a tax, by the way, on the rich. Rich people can't go out and buy up the new crop and eat it, if you like, before the poor people. As a community, we wait until after Pesach. We offer the grain, we offer the Omer offering the day after Pesach, and then everybody can eat of the new crop. And this statement from Rabbi Eliezer, af min chadash, we don't eat from the new produce, even outside the land of Israel, is famously misquoted by the Chatam Sofer. And as we're touching on it, it's worth just re-quoting the Chatam Sofer just to understand his misquote. He's very fond of saying this. So he's writing from Middle Europa. He's engaged in a polemic against modernizers, and he says, I say the new is forbidden from the Torah in any place, i.e., even outside the land of Israel. And this is from one of his tshuvot. In one of the other tshuvot, he actually says he's very happy to quote this from Rabbi Eliezer, who would never accept any new doctrine that he hadn't heard directly from his own teachers. And so the Chatam is fond of saying, the new is forbidden from the Torah in any location. And he is, of course, misquoting Rabbi Eliezer, because Rabbi Eliezer is talking about new produce, not new ideas. And of course, this idea that we can turn new produce into new ideas, well, that, of course, is an innovation. So the Chatam Sofer, although he doesn't sign up to innovation, he does. This statement of his is itself innovative. And it leads to the final Mishnah in this first chapter. After this Mishnah, we'll get back to the bread and butter or the nitty-gritty of betrothal. But the chapter closes with this poetic statement. Anyone who performs one commandment is rewarded, things go well for him, his days are prolonged, and he inherits the land. So again, we're going back to this parallelism of marriage and land. And someone who doesn't perform one commandment, things don't go well for him, his days aren't prolonged, and he doesn't inherit the land. And the same applies to study. And someone who doesn't have Bible, doesn't have Tanakh, and doesn't have Mishnah, and doesn't have derech haaretz. I'm not sure whether this is the way of the land or whether this refers to kind of derech eretz in the way we explain it today. In other words, just how to get along with people. This person, ein ze min hayishuv, he doesn't belong to civilization. He's not a civilized person. But on the other hand, hamachazik bishloshtan, someone who holds on to all three of these. Alav hakatuv omer, about him the text speaks. V'hachut hamushulash lo bimhera yinatek. The threefold cord, the three-corded rope, is not easily broken. The three-corded rope is not easily broken. That's how the first chapter of Kiddushin ends. And then as we move on to the next chapter, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of laws about betrothal.